Today's great interview is with the one and only Mandy McAllister. By day, Mandy is a medical sales rep, but by night, she's a phenomenal real estate investor. So she's an awesome person. Glad I got to know her through this interview, and since then we've created the Mindset series, which you should absolutely check out. So before all that though, check today's interview with Mandy. She talks from more of a personal standpoint and the career that she's had and everything that she loves about real estate. As always, like and subscribe with on Wrestling with Real Estate, the YouTube channel. Go to the WWRE podcast and give me a 5-star rating and write me a review if you think it's worthy. And I'm looking to speak to as many of you as possible. If you love real estate just like me, I'd love to get on a 30-minute call and get to know you a little bit more. See if there's any way whatsoever I can help you. So there's going to be a link in the description down below. Or if you go to the Wrestling with Real Estate website, there's going to be a link there. And I would just love to get to know you, understand more about why you love real estate, and I can tell you why I love real estate. So it'll be a fun conversation. But before that, stick around for today's phenomenal interview with the one and only Mandy McAllister.
Hello and welcome to Wrestling with Real Estate, where we look to chokeslam all your real estate problems. I'm your host, former WWE wrestler and now Cirque du Soleil performer, and of course, multifamily real estate investor, Barry Griffiths. Now today we have Mandy McAllister with us. Hey, Mandy.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. I'm excited to get into it today. So before we go any further, I've decided I'm going to hit you with some hard-hitting questions. This is the segment.
Bring it on.
Hard-hitting questions to start. All right, there's just some fun questions to get off the mark. What's your favorite color?
Blue is my favorite color. It goes with my eyes.
If you could choose any superpower, what would it be?
Time travel. And I'm going back to 2010 and I'm buying everything I can.
I like that one a lot. I like that one. I'm going to steal that one myself. What's your favorite movie?
Grease. It's got to be Grease.
Oh.
I think most women my age would probably be that or Dirty Dancing. So. Okay.
I got to hold my hands up and say I haven't seen either.
I
know.
We got to get your wife on
that. I'll put my money on that she hasn't seen either as well. What's your favorite meal?
Anything off the grill, especially, I grew up on a farm, so sweet corn off the grill is my big jam.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you for participating in that bit of hard-hitting questions. Let's get into this. Before we dive into the conversation, I'm super excited to talk again. We talked last week and that was a lot of fun, so I'm looking excited to get a little deeper into the stuff that you're into. It's what you're doing. I'm having terrible troubles talking now for some reason. That round caught me off guard. But anyway, can you tell us a little bit about your background and kind of what your focus is right now?
Yeah, sure. So by day, I am a medical device rep. I've been doing that since I finished grad school. I invest in multifamily. I really kind of specialize, I guess, in small multis, venturing into kind of more medium-sized stuff. We just took down a 53 unit in Indianapolis as a JV, and we're going down here in a couple of days to check out a couple off-market deals, a 125 and a 28. So we like that kind of middle-sized, I guess, that's big enough to take down just with the team. So
cool. Yeah, very cool. So what would you consider mid-size, right? Because it depends who you talk to. Everyone has a different. Because to me, or when I started out, big was 30 units, right? And then I realized that's small.
Right.
Well,
I think these boot camps and gurus and whatever, everybody says, go look for a 200 unit, because it'll support its own property management staff. Like you can actually hire your own people if it's that size. But, I think that, 800 new investors are getting pumped out from these quarterly boot camps, which it's awesome. I'm throwing no stones. That's how I got started. But I also think this mild contrarian piece of my brain leads me to believe that you're going to find more deals if you're looking where other people aren't looking. So the kind of 20 to 50 up to 100 maybe doesn't have necessarily as many eyes on it. So that's why I like that.
Yeah. And I'm the same way. I like that, especially 20 to 50 space. I think, because I think there might be a lot of opportunity coming up, right? That's a whole nother conversation, but I think there's going to be some opportunity in that 20 to 50 space because it's not sophisticated owners, right? If you're getting 100 plus units, there's a good chance that they've got good property management. People know what they're doing, right? Because it's hard to buy one of those without kind of knowing what you're doing.
I think the real sweet spot is if you can qualify for agency debt, like if you get that really good long-term non-recourse debt on it, but you need a loan balance of roughly $1 million in order to make that happen. So, you really kind of do need at least 20 doors, depending on price per door, to make that happen. Yeah. Totally agree.
Yeah. So how do you get into real estate investing? You said, you're in medical sales, right? How did you get into real estate investing to start off with?
So I remember being at a party in undergrad, and one of my sorority sisters was talking about her dad owned the house that we were at. And she rented the rooms to our other sorority sisters, and she always had money to go do stuff, So I thought it blew my mind. And then ended up, just kind of diving into the education stuff, expecting that, listening to what people told me to do, and bought my own place to live in before investing. And in order to buy a condo in downtown Chicago, you got to save a heck of a lot of money in order to make that happen. So, thought in 2008, I'm going to move into this. I'm going to BRRRR method. I'm going to refinance. I'm going to move out, get a renter in here. But 2008, we were, not totally at the bottom of the correction yet. So it took till 2014 really for me to move out to make that happen.
Okay. That was your first foray. It was a condo?
It was I still have the condo. I actually have it listed. So if you want a beautiful condo in the West Loop of Chicago, I got one for you.
So you knew about the BRRRR back then, or was it called? It wasn't called the BRRRR back then, I'm guessing.
Well,
right?
2014. It's a bigger pockets term, I guess. So I guess it. I don't know. I think it existed then, but I was all the way down that rabbit hole.
Okay. So you bought it to live in to start off with the idea of then renovating, refinance, rent and whatever. Yeah, I'm always mess that up.
Yeah. I'd like to buy a vowel. I don't know.
But sort of what made you take that step? Was it what was driving you? Just trying to create wealth, or were you just thought this is a good investment? Because how old were you at the time? I'm guessing you were pretty.
I bought that condo when I was 28.
Okay.
So 28, and then I didn't end up moving out of it until I was 33. So, that one was kind of always built in. That one wasn't scary to me at all. Yeah. The first purchase for the express purpose of investment, the 4-unit that I did next, that one was a little scary which is funny to look back on now,
Yeah. So that was your second investment, the 4-unit. Yes. Okay. Tell us a little bit about that then. How many years later? And tell us. Yeah.
So this was 2016.
Okay.
My son was just born, so you should maybe take some notes on this, because my thought was, I'll buy this 4-unit and I'll have it roughly almost paid off by the time college rolls around. I put a new loan on it. Whatever money I pull out, that just magically becomes my kid's college fund, and then I still have this cash flowing asset. Another thing I kind of luckily learned on that was I bought an unfurnished rental, 4 units, 1 bedrooms by a college, and was coaching volleyball at the time, and talked to a girl who had just graduated from there. Well, if you want to rent an apartment at Illinois State University, who do you call? And they knew these 2 groups, these 2 property managers that had branded themselves to kids. And I interviewed both of them, and I went with these guys who were fantastic. And, we furnished I used basically their catalog of stuff they, buy in bulk to furnish the units. And we went from $450 in rents to $825.
Wow.
because it's now a furnished rental. So if I trusted the state of Illinois, I'd be rinsing and repeating that method 100 times over, especially because that property manager is so great.
Wow. So okay, I'm getting this right. You bought a 4-unit that was that was next to the university.
Yep.
And then, but did you rent it out by the room, each unit by the room, or did you rent it out by the unit on that one?
So they happen to be 1-bedrooms. So
Okay.
the way they do rent by the room, but interestingly, and my thought was like, if I have 1-bedroom units, then I'm either getting grad students or, you know, kids who likely don't want to live in the party house. So there's less potential for stuff getting ruined. And it's actually been kind of a blessing through COVID, because my contemporaries down there that do buy the 4 bedrooms, who kind of rely on that extra rent out of all 4 bedrooms, they ain't getting it this year.
Yeah.
So it's been a cool experience, that one.
Yeah, that's really smart. I never thought about that, because then you for one, you're only getting 1 person in each unit, so it's not, you get 4 people in a room, you're going to get 4 times as much damage. It just makes sense. Plus,
Yeah.
as you pointed out, the type of person that you're getting there as well is probably different to the people that want to party and go crazy or whatever it is. Plus, another thing as well is you're not relying. So if you have 4 people in a room, you're relying, say they all pay $500, whatever it is. You're relying on $2,000 per
unit.
Yeah, exactly. But you can always go out. You're not going to get that much more per unit for college student, as opposed if you had to turn it back into a normal rental as well.
Right.
So yeah, that's really cool.
I actually have 2 kind of cool hacks there.
Okay.
Well, this is so we built in internet, because they're college students, right? So that I pay like $20 a unit, and then they pay me another $50 for their internet. And if they don't pay, then we shut off the internet. And there's a real fast way to get a 20-year-old kid to pay some rent, is to take away their, social media.
Yeah.
And also I have their parents co-sign with them. So
I was going to ask about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how that works is the parents co-sign, and any damages that are incurred or lack of rent, they're liable for that, and then you can kind of go after them for that.
Well, I've been, like I said, I've been so lucky. So big shout out to Sammy in Normal, Illinois. If you guys ever want to own college rentals by Illinois State, you've got to call these guys. They're really incredible. That, I've had like big problems. Like we had a drug dealer, and they called me and said, "Hey, sorry, you're going to miss out on a month of rent." But they fixed the whole problem, and I didn't have one mild headache about it.
Wow.
So yeah, they just kind of take care of everything for me.
Wow. That's how you want your rentals to be, right? That's
yeah, for sure.
That's rare. Let's put it like that, right? It doesn't always go that. So cool. So yeah, so you've had you're having some little bit of success. You had this 4-unit, and where do you go from there? You've got the bug now, right? You think, okay,
oh yeah. Yeah, I've been bitten by this point.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you too that, we met on a mindset panel. I think mindset is everything. And the realizing I didn't die on the other side of being so nervous about this 4-plex really kind of made action a thing that was addictive, So I ended up passively investing in a 130-unit property in San Antonio that has subsequently gone full cycle. Knew the guys putting together the deal and loved the business plan, and wanted to get involved in multifamily, and thought that was a great way to kind of dip my toe in the water.
Yeah. Why did you go passive then? Why didn't you continue? You're a superstar, billionaire, real estate tycoon at this point, right? So no, but why didn't you continue going active? What made you choose to go with a passive investment on this one?
Yeah, so I feel like there's a lot of benefit in walking before you run. And I was an athlete forever. I've had coaches in everything I've ever done. I hired a coach and really wanted to observe and learn from other people's mistakes, because I loved this 4-plex, and I knew I wanted to add a 0 to the end of it, but I didn't want to add a 0 to the end of a mistake that I might make. So I wanted to have an opportunity to kind of watch and learn before biting it all off by myself.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the great thing about when you invest passively in the deal is, even if you have aspirations to be a general partner yourself, you want to run your deal yourself, is that you're getting paid to learn in some ways, right? You're getting a return on your money, and you're seeing so many things. You're seeing what kind of deals they're buying, how they're underwriting, how they're, they usually have as a webinar leading up to the investment. You kind of see all that stuff. Then you see, once you're in the deal, what kind of stuff do they do then, right? What do they do for renovations? How do they report this? What do they do when things go wrong? When do they pay you? All this stuff, and you're seeing all this stuff, and you're getting a return in your money. So it's not quite like coaching, but it's you learn a lot. And I know, because I invested passively myself, and it's really cool, because you see, okay, there's some things I like, some things I don't. I might do this different. So when you get your own deal, you can kind of see all this stuff. So I think passive, plus you get all the benefits of being passive. You usually get a pretty good return. You're part of a bigger deal that you could never probably take down yourself, and you get great tax benefits. And you just check that your money's there every month, pretty much, to some extent. Yeah.
Well, and it goes on your real estate resume, having been, it's not as powerful of having signed on the agency debt, but it's something that counts towards your experience that they, will underwrite for you. Yeah,
100%. And that's a great point. That's a very good point. So that deal went full cycle. It's done pretty well. I'm guessing you're pretty happy with that. Where did you go from there?
So in 20 months, to kind of update you on that return, in 20 months, I made 50% on my money.
Wow.
So
what's
it was
on that. Is it 10 IRR?
Oh, well, it was just under 2 years. So it was 24 point something percent.
Okay.
Yeah, it was pretty killer. The business plan was so good though. Some previous owner took 2 units and made them 1. And we basically just undid what the previous owner did, which totally dominated the NOI. But so after putting in money to that passive investment, I realized, like, I kind of have these 2 buckets. There's these short-term big growth things of syndications, which by nature of what a syndication is, it's people pooling their money together, and there's a business plan of usually 3 to 7 years. And that can yield some really big growth if you're doing value add assets. But, in order to feel okay about leaving my day job as a single mom, I need to have, a really reliable floor of cash flow coming in. So the other bucket, what I call my forever money, the, kind of annuity that prints every single month, are my small multis and single family stuff. So I went and did a 6 unit in just over the border in Kenosha, Wisconsin, which tertiary city. Who's ever heard of Kenosha, Wisconsin? And now hilariously, it was like a block from where everything went down. But yeah, that's been really, really cool. It was a mom and pop owner that they didn't know what they had. It happened to be in an opportunity zone, which I wanted to try out. It wasn't, I don't think for the type of investing that I do, that opportunity zones really helped me any, but it was an interesting thing to learn a whole lot about. So we still have that. I just refinanced that 6 unit in Kenosha in the last, since COVID.
Okay. Yeah, well, maybe talk us a little bit about that deal, but also maybe you said you learned some stuff about the opportunity zones, right? I've never done an opportunity zone fund or anything like that. So maybe talk to us a little bit about what you learned from the opportunity zone, and then let's dive into the deal a little bit more.
Sure. Yeah. Well, an opportunity zone, I am not a tax professional.
Neither am I.
Right. Yeah. Disclaimer.
Yeah. I've got to say that these days, unfortunately.
I know, right? What an opportunity zone is, it was a newly established thing within this administration that if you sell stock, let's say, and you have a huge capital gain, you can put that into an opportunity zone. And if you let that stay there long enough, starting at 7 years, I think, and then maxing out at 10 years, then you basically postpone and then shave off some of the capital gain tax that you would need to pay. But in terms of what you have to put in an equal number of dollars to the purchase price of the building. So it kind of like, it's a development play. If I had enough land next to it and I could build a fourplex, another something, then it might have made sense. But, there was no way I was going to put 100% additional capital into that, or there's no way that I could. So it didn't make sense for the type of asset or type of investing that I do. I think it's a real developer's play. And I think if you have a crap ton of stock market gains, that it might make a ton of sense. But neither of those criteria suited my needs.
Right. So you weren't able to capitalize on the opportunity fund.
Right. I mean, but it's an interesting thing to, say that I
learn. Yeah. Sure, yeah.
But what was interesting about this deal, and what I think is interesting about every deal, is, we know the way that multifamily is valued is based off of the net operating income. So and the number one thing that feeds into an NOI is what rents are you charging and what rents could you charge? Well, I found this property that was charging $475 a month, and across the street they were getting $800.
Wow.
I'm like, this building was, it's not pretty, but it's the same area. Like, you can't convince me that we're not going to be able to capture, $700 instead of $800 if we make it a little nicer. And we have in that amount of time. But really, for me, I'll give you another hack that I really like here. I have a virtual assistant in the Philippines who goes through apartments.com and does like a copy paste of all of the advertised rates for apartments and their square footage. So I can get a sense of, all right, these are the assets that are completely undervalued. And when we do kind of a mailing or a calling campaign, we can really narrow in, laser focus on 10 or 20 properties, because we know there's this huge potential bump in rent available.
Wow. That is brilliant. I've not heard that before, but it makes absolute perfect. No, it's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Because if they're below market rent, right, you're guessing, for one, they might be mismanaged, or that people don't understand what they necessarily have with that property, might be mom and pop owners. But also if they're, below market rent, if you can get a decent deal and get it for the right price,
right,
you have all that room to raise rent and increase the value of the property. That's brilliant. Yeah. So have you had any... No, it is absolutely. It is absolutely brilliant. Have you had any success with that? Reaching out to owners through that?
Nope. We're just staying engaged, staying close to the rim. Like I said, the thing in this, like a lot of mailers, brokerage does a lot of mailers, but they need a lot of deals a year in order to hit their goals of what they need for returns in their business, right? If I'm honest with myself, I need like one good deal a year, So just really deciding to make these 30 guys feel special so that they remember me, that, not yet, but I'm hopeful.
Yeah, and I think the feedback I seem to be getting from a lot of people with mailers and going direct to owners is that it's over time, and you expect to do it over time. It's not a thing where you send out mailers, maybe like a wholesaler does a ton of mailers 1 month and then you get some leads off that. It's something you've got to expect 6 months to a year at least, probably, to create those relationships, as I'm sure you're doing, and get in front of them, and them you being there at the right time is also something else, right? It's like they might not be ready now, but in 3 months it might be. And if you're in front of them, you might be the person that they call. So, but I like that strategy a lot, because also it's not the shotgun approach, right? Where you're just trying to blast out to all the owners.
Exactly.
Right? It's you're taking a bow and arrow almost, and kind of zeroing on that target and finding ones where it makes sense that they might want to sell. So that's really cool. That's maybe cool. Maybe in 6 months you can come back when you've had 20 deals from that 30 owners.
I love it. Yeah, you got it.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. So what was next to you? So you did the passive deal, right? What was next after that? Oh, the 6th unit. Sorry.
Then the 6th. Yep.
Memory of a goldfish. Then the 6th unit, and then what was next from there?
And then I did some hard money lending. I kind of zagged a little bit.
Okay.
The people that I've been coaching, I tell them, learn from my mistakes. Do not give FOMO. Like I've lost at least a year of time of progress, because I have this fear of missing out because of shiny object syndrome. Did some hard money lending, entertained the idea of working on a really large project in Chicagoland, which kind of it didn't pan out and didn't work out to my advantage. But then after that, through some friendships that I'd made from lots of, I run a meetup in Chicago, a multifamily related meetup. And made a business partner out of that, and we just closed on a 53 unit in Indianapolis. So that's the most recent acquisition, the 53.
So yeah, I can completely relate with the shiny object syndrome. I'm so guilty of that, because whoever you listen to, whatever they're doing, there's people successful in doing everything, right? And when they talk about what they're doing, whatever it is, right? Tax liens, wholesaling, flipping, whatever it is, right? They make it sound so easy and so attractive, right? And they got a deal for 40 cents on the dollar, and they just turned around and they made $2 million, and then they bought another one and they made $5 million. And it sounds amazing, and it sounds like everyone could do it and everyone should be doing it, right? And I'm so guilty of that. And, a little story, right, is I'm so close to buying an assisted living facility.
Right.
Under contract on a residential assisted living facility. And luckily I pulled out because I was dealing with some unfortunately shady people, but that's not the point. The point is that, just like yourself, I spent 6 months going after assisted living facilities. And if I had spent that time focusing on what I'm focusing on now, which is multifamily, I probably would have got a deal, at least one deal, right? And that deal would have, especially this was 2 years ago now, would have probably gone up in value and everything else like that. So I think that's a massive, I think we both learned that lesson that. Yeah. And I still have the trouble today. I'm like, oh, shit, that sounds good. But I just keep telling myself, there's people making money in all aspects of real estate. Yes. What you pick is it doesn't matter. Just pick that and stick to it. Get good at it, learn it, network in that space, get to know everyone in that space, and just focus in on that, because that it makes a lot of sense to do that. But as you were telling the story, I was laughing to myself. But,
right?
Yeah. So hard money lending. Maybe talk a little bit about that, because that's an interesting concept, and I feel like that's not too bad, right? You can kind of do that on the side, right, as well, right? So how did you get into that, and then what did you lend on?
Well, so kind of being part of these communities, like everybody's doing something, and everybody needs some money, right, to make these deals happen. And I, through my day jobs, have had a bunch of 401ks and rolled those over into IRAs, and I can't use those funds for my own deals, but I sure as anything can lend it out to people that I know that are doing deals that make sense to me. So we actually just, I just got the funds back from someone that I know from these communities, from my Meetup, actually. They basically did a flip with my funds on a duplex, and they did quite well for themselves, and I made, 11% on my money. So, and especially with it being, IRA dollars, I can't use them anyway. So I might as well, get involved in, how I can. And maybe someday, he's going to help me out too. So I don't know that I would at all call myself an expert in this. Honestly, I would probably revisit the contract we had. I made sure that I had, lien on the property, but, this is one where if I do it again, I will spend more time on the kind of contractual piece of things.
Okay. And so when you chose the lenders, the lendees, whatever that is, the borrowers. Borrowers. How did you just have a prior relationship with them? How did you get to know them? How did you know that you could trust them, or think that you could trust them?
Right. So, well, I mean, yeah. So he came to my meetup. He actually helped me host my meetup because I needed a venue, and he was a real estate agent. We used his agency to do the meetup. So he and I had worked on a number of things. We'd underwritten deals together, kind of moving in a path to, do a deal in Kansas City as a team. I have done a background check on him. This is a thing that I've learned from messed up partnerships. But, I trust but verify, Yeah.
And then, but did you do any research on the property itself, its value, its ARV? So what did you do in that aspect to protect yourself?
What mattered to me is that the dollars I was giving them, because I wasn't getting a part of the upside. I was just strictly the percentage rate. What I needed to feel comfortable was, I'm giving you $100,000. What is this property worth today?
Mhm.
So if I have to take the property, is it going to be worth at least $100,000? And it appraised for over the $100,000. And I was, the primary lien holder. So I felt comfortable in that, right? And he and his partner that did this deal, they've flipped before, and he's been a real estate agent forever. So I, kind of trusted their track record. But what mattered to me most was that I would have something that was worth the amount of the money that I gave them should it all hit the fan.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then how did you set it up? Did you fund 100% of the purchase, part of the purchase, some of the rehab? What were you?
I was some of the rehab and 100% of the purchase.
Okay.
So it was just $100,000, and they bought for 80 and used 20 and then some other money in order to rehab, and they just sold, and I got, my money back in my 401k or IRA, self-directed IRA.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great way to do it as well, because for one, you're leveraging other people's skill set, right? You might not want to flip yourself, but you can kind of turn that money, and, your money is kind of sitting there otherwise, right? And you get, like you said, 11% return, right? Where else are you going to kind of might get that? Yeah. So then you bought a 52 unit, right, as part of a joint venture. Mm-hmm. That's pretty cool.
53, yeah.
I always get people's numbers wrong.
No, whatever. And it's like, I feel silly.
One unit, that makes a big difference as well. So 53 units. Where was the property?
It's in Indianapolis, next to the Speedway. I really like that area because it was kind of run down previously, but the Penske family has bought a bunch of different racetracks and has really, pumped a lot of funds and revitalization into the areas that they've acquired, the racetracks. And you see that in, droves in the Indy area. So Speedways, it's a cool little downtown. There's new developments happening. I'm really excited about that asset.
Cool. So how do you found a partner for this? How did you set it up, and how did you find the deal as well?
Yeah, so actually also through my Meetup, Brian had been coming to my Meetup for years, and he was going to start one of his own. And I had realized that, I love, teaching, and I love helping people learn, and, but it's not a revenue generating activity, hosting a Meetup really. So I wanted a partner. I wanted help in that. So I approached him, hey, I know you're starting yours downtown, mine's in the suburbs. Let's do this together. And then from that, he's a broker in Chicago by profession, and ended up finding this deal in Indy. We, went and looked at it, underwrote it. It totally worked. We had one primary capital partner who wanted to get more involved in multifamily, and we, closed on that within 45 days or so of initial LOI. Yeah, that was a good one.
Wow, cool. Do you mind sharing some of the numbers? What did you guys buy that for, if you don't mind sharing?
Sure. Yeah. It was 415 was the final price that we settled on. It was 4.15. Yeah. So the way I'm looking at this is another piece of this mild contrarian piece of my brain is everybody thinks value add. But if you look at the cap rates, how they've compressed and how much of the upside you actually have to pay for, you kind of are taking this risk that you're paying for the opportunity to do a huge rehab and maybe get the rents that you think you're projecting, right? So there's a lot of, uncertainty in that. And in this uncertain time, I really like this deal, especially because it was already in place. It was a stabilized asset. The whole rehab had been completed. We put a Fannie loan on it. 15-year term, 8 years of that is IO.
Okay.
And it was, and it's assumable. So I think the real play right now, or at least on this asset again, this is my stability bucket that we're just going to have a big cash flow coming off of this. And, that loan is almost as much of an asset as the property itself.
What kind of, do you guys get a crazy low rate on it?
3.68.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
yeah, that's
So
incredible.
yes is the answer.
Yeah, like you say, that the debt itself can be an asset, because if you get a rate at 3.68, like what would it be in a year ago? 5 at least, maybe 6,
Yeah.
6. You know, you're almost at 50% of what that interest rate is. So it really helps with your cash flow massively, you know, and you can
Hmm.
almost not afford to overpay. You don't want to overpay, of course, but it, you know, gives you more buying power with that, right?
Exactly.
There's some terms that you talked in there that you said 15-year term, 15
Hmm.
years IO. What do those mean for people?
Sorry, yes. 15. So the loan is amortized over 30 years. So just like your home's mortgage, the the payments are sliced up over the course of 30 years, but that loan term, it's only good for 15 years. So they promise us that loan for 15 years. 8 years of that is interest only, IO or interest only, which is, again, if you have a cash flow play that you're looking just for, you know, that annuity check, interest only is pretty fantastic. And assumable means that if we decide to sell this property, Fannie Mae will also allow the loan to go with the property. So they can take the loan with it, which you cannot convince me that in 7 years' time, 3.68 isn't going to look like a friggin' steal.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're pretty excited.
It's hard to believe that interest rate would go any lower. They might go slightly, but over time, there's only one way that interest rates can go up, right? Unless
Exactly.
unless they're giving money away, right? Which they're kind of
Mm-hmm.
doing right now. So yes, as you touched the 15-year term. So a lot of times there'll be a 5-year term, right? A lot
Yep.
of times that's kind of the most common thing. So after 5 years, you have to either refinance, sell, or sometimes it adjusts into an adjustable rate loan. But if you have 15 years time, a 15-year term, that gives you so much more time to do whatever you need with. There's no rush. You can ride out, you know, if we head into any kind of recession from here, you can ride it out. You won't be in a rush to sell. And also another thing that you talked about there was the interest only, right? You know, usually you pay principal and interest, but this time you're only paying the interest for the 8 years. So that is, again, is going to increase the cash flow. For the first 8 years, you're going to have, I imagine, phenomenal cash flow, right? Which is really going to be really cool. And then also the assumable, because a lot of these loans, there's either what they call yield maintenance or a prepayment penalty, which means that the bank or whoever's making the loan, they've calculated that they're going to make a certain amount on that interest every year for the next whatever 10 years. So if you sell that property before that time, they might lose money or they're not going to hit their targeted returns. So they charge you a prepayment penalty or a yield, what they call yield maintenance. And as Mandy alluded to there, if you have an assumable loan, you don't have to sell that loan. You can just sell the property, but the loan can come in with it. And also, you know, if that debt is low at the time, that's attractive for people. So it would make it easier to kind of do that. So those are some terms, just in case people don't understand.
Yeah.
The financing aspect of stuff is another thing in itself, right? It's a beast by itself, the financing aspect of multifamily. So seeing as this was your real decent sized, let's call it decent size, right? Not big, not small, not medium,
Right.
whatever, decent sized multifamily. Was there any challenges in getting a loan? Was there any challenges in getting brokers to take you seriously? Did you have any of those troubles?
You know, I have kind of walked down the aisle with a bunch of different assets that have fallen through. And yes, it's in this asset in particular, because I had a built-in track record from my partners, it wasn't as difficult as previous attempts had been. So, you know, this is a team sport. You hear it all the time. If you can leverage if you can add value in some way and, you know, leverage someone else's balance sheet or experience or whatever, you know, that's what teams are all about.
Yeah. And when qualifying for the loan, did you guys have to bring on a key principal to sign for the loan to meet the liquidity and net worth requirement?
Well, our primary equity partner
Okay.
really kind of took care of that. So, yeah.
Because what happens is sometimes when people, usually with a loan, they need a net worth or liquidity equal or greater to the loan amount. So what a lot of people do is they won't qualify for themselves, but they'll find someone who meets that criteria and they'll give them a percentage of the deal or a set amount, and they'll just to sign on the loan so they meet that now. But you guys had that equity partner. How did you meet this guy? How did you create that relationship? And and have them invest with you?
He actually, I was introduced to him from my business partner, Brian. Brian, like I said, is a commercial broker in Chicagoland, and he had shown a number of properties to this guy, and you know, ended up doing these deals. They had done one in Northwest Indiana prior to me joining the team, but for the Indianapolis kind of central Indiana acquisitions, we're working together on those.
Cool, cool. So the plan with that one is there's no real value add. It's just to keep it stabilized, run it well, keep you know, have good operations, and over time you'll pay down the debt. You'll get great cash flow, and you know, I assume over a 15-year time, that value of that property is going to go up, right? If, you know, if we're to believe that inflation is going to be a problem in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think inflation is I think our government needs inflation, you know, so to kind of bet on what our government needs, I think is an ideal kind of investment. So.
And that's really interesting as well, going back to what you said about how you saw this investment, right? Value add is what's talked about all the time, right? If you're not doing value add in multifamily, what are you doing, right? Well, that's not necessarily the case, right? But you hear it all the time. It's one of the most overused terms, right? And what value add means is you usually buy a property that needs some kind of work, right? Usually interior renovations, which is going to mean increased rents, right? Sometimes you have deferred maintenance, but that's how most people's business models is, I'd say. But the problem with what's been happening lately, right, is that you talked a little bit about this, is that cap rates have been compressed so much, and pricing has gone up so much. You're almost paying the same for a property that is stabilized, that you just go in there and cash flow day one, and you know, you always cash flow day one, but he's getting to your yields that you want. Whereas there's other properties that you're paying a premium for that value add, and it almost, you know, it's getting so close now that there isn't a big difference between both. And it makes sense because you never know, right? For example, if you're doing a heavy value add property, you're spending 10,000 a unit for, say, you could have all kinds of problems, right? The more rehab you have to do, the bigger usually the problems and things that can go wrong. And I like that idea a lot, especially holding for the long term as well. It just makes all the sense in the world. So I like the way you think. You say contrarian, but I would use smart rather than contrarian.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I think that the idea of having buckets too, like if you know you're venturing into something for that huge kind of, you know, capital event that your, you know, value add will help you make that happen. That's one thing that needs to be a huge growth bucket. But I think that, you know, we'd be underserving our community here if we didn't pay attention to having some sort of like stability, that forever money that we talked about before too.
It's cool. Yeah. I like the bucket analogy as well. How many buckets do you think you have?
I want a growth bucket and I want a stability bucket. So I did a master's in economics, and just the investing community, you know, if you go to a stockbroker, they'll talk about, you know, the diversification, whatever. This is just how I choose to diversify. I've got my kind of steady cash flow guys that are easy layups that I don't think they're going anywhere. And then I have my ones that I'm doing big rehabs on that I'm hoping to have a capital event on. So just two.
Yeah. You mentioned your Meetup a few times as well, and it seems like your Meetup has contributed to your success, would you say, to some degree? Oh.
Yeah, I mean, meeting people, relationships is everything, you know. So getting a chance to be on the front of the room was helpful for sure. But I think that, you know, just showing up at things is in building relationships and getting to know people like you and all of the other people that I've come across. That's what's contributed most to my success, I think.
That's cool. But I just wanted to talk a little bit more about the Meetup, because I'm always interested by that, you know, like, what made you want to start the Meetup to start off with, and then how did you go about it? Was it as easy as just signing up for meetup.com? And
kind of, it was, I mean, it's just a decision. It's like anything in life that's a big undertaking. You just decide you're going to do it and you go do it, right? I hired a real estate coach who this was one of his pieces of advice that, you know, go to meetups in your area. And in Chicago at the time, there didn't happen to be one. So I started mine, and it just so happened that a few more popped up in the last couple years. But, you know, we're 3 years going strong and we've got about 1,000 members. It's pretty cool.
How many people, pre-COVID, how many people would turn up at you?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, it was always a different 30-ish or 40, depending on, you know, the subject matter. But since COVID, you know, it's kind of been a really cool little blessing because, like I mentioned, having all of these relationships, there's people light years ahead of me in terms of their investing journey. And they're givers, they're kind people who want to help out too. But to ask them to fly to Chicago to give a talk is one thing, but to come on Zoom, sure, they'll do that, no problem, you know? So we've had some really stellar big deal guests that we wouldn't have otherwise have had COVID not happened. So
are you still online, or are you able to do them in person?
We got one tonight. You want to come?
Yeah, online?
Yeah.
Okay,
yep.
I'll be there tonight for sure.
Cool.
Like, I love online. Yeah, you're so true. The online, I've been to so many meetups in the last 6 months that I never would have ever been able to go. And it's not the same, of course, as being in person. You know, it's really cool to meet people in person. But I've met some people for this. I've been in ones in Columbus, ones in, I don't know, I think in New York, in Florida, and I don't know, all over the country. And I haven't left my house, right? And it's really cool in that aspect. And I wonder if in the future you might be able to spread some light on this. Are you going to strictly go in person in the future, or will you kind of try and do both maybe?
Well, we've kind of toyed with the idea of doing 1 month on, 1 month off.
Yeah.
You know, kind of trying to, I don't know, like it's been a really cool experience. I think people kind of have Zoom overload, you know, fatigue right now. But I mean, it does open a ton more doors. We haven't fully decided yet. We know we're going Zoom all through the end of the calendar year, at least. But, you know, Chicago's pretty tight on the way we're following rules, you know, in terms of not too many people. So I see it. I think that 1 month on, 1 month off might actually happen.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. And, you know, I think meetups, they have a lot of benefits, right, for anyone who might be considering starting on. For one, like you said, you're standing at the front of the room, right? Whether you're an expert or not, you can talk. I don't mean you personally. I just mean in general, whoever's standing.
I was not when I started it. I had done a fourplex when I started my meetup, you know, but you got to start somewhere.
Yeah, that just goes to show you, right? You don't, you know, I think a lot of people tell themselves that they need to, you know, I've done a ton of transactions to start a meetup event because who's going to listen to them? But that's not the point. For one, having that 4 unit, you are miles ahead of many people, right? Many people don't even get to their first deal, but that's not the point. You don't need to be the one talking. You bring in guests and you just introduce them, and you just host it, right? You don't need to be one talking about talking specifically about real estate and every component, but you can just kind of do that and position yourself as expert. And you could get to know people, you build relationships. Plus, you know, with inviting guests, you get to know that guest, right? You become friends with them. You get to pick who you want as well. If you have an interest in whatever, you can be kind of gear that towards you. So I think meetups are a really good way to kind of build your network and build your brand almost to some extent. So I think it's cool to see.
And you get to be the one asking the questions.
Yeah,
like you're there because you're curious, so you get to really scratch your own itch.
Yeah, that's what I love about this YouTube and podcasting is that I always hear podcasts and they're always great, but I always had questions in my own head. It's like, no, don't ask this, ask that. So now I get to ask the questions. So much fun. So what's next for you think?
What's next for me? So I'm actually going in a couple of days to check out these other Indianapolis properties. Would love to see a footprint big enough to support our own property management, and then continue to grow that market, and then maybe one more. Like we mentioned, the whole FOMO thing, you know, I feel like you really become an expert when you can get really granular about your knowledge of something. The people that I've been coaching, I tell them, you know, I know when toilet paper goes on sale for $16 at Costco, that is a really good deal. So I buy all of the toilet paper. And when it goes back up to $20, it's not a deal anymore. You gotta know these buildings and these blocks in this area so that you know what a sale looks like, so that you can really stock up when you see it.
Yeah, so true. Yeah, because if you again, going back to that shotgun approach, if you're just looking all over, how can you know each submarket? How can you know rent? How can you know pricing? How can you know you're not, right? And you're just generalizing, and you won't know. You probably won't know a deal if it slapped you in the face at that point, right? But if you do, and also when you get granular and you specialize in that, you know the numbers straight off, right? You're not going to get yourself into something that might not make sense as well, right? Because that could be another problem. You could put yourself in a bad deal if you don't know there. It's not only about missing out, it's also about buying a wrong deal. So that's such a great point for people to kind of focus in on what they want to do. That's so cool. Cool. Well, this has been fun. But there's a part now that I had to ask wrestling themed real estate question. Okay, you warming up over there? I like it. What would your wrestling name be if you had to pick a name for yourself?
Oh, this is easy. Mrs. John Cena.
Mrs. John Cena. You're a John Cena fan then?
I mean, yeah, of course.
Yeah. I'll give you his phone number afterwards.
Okay, thanks.
Every wrestler has a special move or a signature move. What would yours be in real estate?
I think we talked about this a little bit, and this is how we met. I think mindset is everything. Really, you know, mindset is 80% of everything, and the 20% is just mechanics. That's my guy Tony Robbins' quote.
Yeah, no.
But yeah, right. So I mean, you just really kind of having a commitment to knowing what you're doing, commitment towards having impact hours every day that help you further what you're doing. My superpower and my signature move is mindset.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's a strong superpower because it can apply to anything, right? It doesn't need to be real estate. Real estate is what you've chosen, but it's going to serve you well in whatever you do to have that mindset component. So what's been the biggest body slam you've taken in your investing career?
So I told you about my little FOMO in the middle there. I was going to be helping out some people who were friends first. And I didn't really know them in a deep business capacity. They were just friends. We went to church together. Our kids played together, and yada, 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 did not do the background searches that I should have done, and ended up losing a crap ton of money in the process. Yeah. So, I mean, it's a really expensive lesson, but it's a really good lesson that even if it's your good buddies, make sure there's a contract, make sure that you know how they do business, regardless of if they're your friends. Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm sorry that happened to you. That sucks. But, I guess you live and you learn and you move on, and you're going to be successful regardless anyway. I know that. I can tell that. But I think that's such a good point as well, right? Because with friends and family, you might think, or people that you might think, oh, we don't need to write that down. We have a basic contract or whatever. Write everything down, right? You should write, have an operating agreement, have everything written down and understood from day one, because when money comes involved, right, it's strange how people change and how things can get interrupted with that. You wouldn't do it with a stranger, right? You wouldn't not have everything written down. So if they're friends and family, always have everything written down to the right, even if you think it's silly to have that written down, because everyone knows what their job is and everyone knows how things work. There's no miscommunication, no misunderstanding at that point. And yeah, I've always heard that to document everything.
And have the awkward conversation up front. Like if it feels weird, you probably should talk about it.
Yeah, great advice. So was there a moment you were standing on the top rope getting ready to jump? What was it and how, but you were too scared? So was there a moment you were standing on the top rope getting ready to jump, but you were too scared? What was it and how did you overcome it?
It was 100% the first fourplex that I did. And am I really going to do this? Is this really, what if it all, like, what if they sue me? What if they, all of the chatter in my head, that it takes over if you let it. The way I got through it was I talked to someone who was a seasoned investor and said, listen, this is what I want to do. Will you tell me if this is a deal that you would do? And that investor says, yes, I would do that deal 6 ways to Sunday, 100 times next week if you'll let me. And that gave me the confidence that, okay, you know, we can figure it out, you know, and we did, and it went great.
Yeah, I know the exact same thing in my first investment property. Is just these numbers aren't going to happen. You try and calculate the numbers, right? And you're like, oh, what if this is wrong? What if that is wrong? Then what if this breaks? And what if the roof blows away? And then what if there's a fire? But you know, in the end, as long as you've done your homework and you understand, and that's a great point as well, is leverage other people, experienced people's opinion and expertise, and get them to kind of look at it as well and look over your shoulder. And you know, usually you won't, as long as you've done your homework and you understand what you're getting into, usually you don't regret it, right? I know I don't regret it. It was the best thing I did was doing that investment. And then from there, it's so much easier, right? That first one, you're like, oh my God, I got to wire money. I've got to sign on this. And you're like, oh my
Your
goodness.
palms are sweating. And
yeah, you're so scared. You wire the money, like, did it get there? Did it get there? And you don't get the confirmation. You're like, oh my God, I've just lost 100 grand or whatever. That's just sent it to nobody. But once you've done that, then it's easy, right? It's almost fun then from there.
It's a muscle. It's like anything. When you do anything hard, the first time it sucks. The next time it will be easier.
Yeah, so true, so true. Talk a little bit about your coaching. You know, who do you coach? What do you offer?
Yeah, so, well, I have been coaching, coming from medical device sales, you know, okay, so if I go back a couple of years, my number that I had to hit in order to make the pay that my plan number, I had to sell 1 million, but I sold 2 million, right? And then the next year, to make that same plan amount of money, I now have to sell $2 million, right? And my boss at the time, you know, it was completely unsustainable. So my boss at the time says, you know, go and, you know, look through patient charts. Like, look at this printer at 10 a.m. and you'll see all the patient information. So you fill out the forms and you put it on the chart. Well, that is a complete, like, that's a felony, you know, looking through patient charts is a felony. So I said, no, I will not do this. But the only reason I had the power to do this was because I had, you know, single mom, I had, you know, $3,000 or $4,000, whatever it was, coming in a month from my rentals at that point, that, you know, I knew my kid would be fed and my mortgage would be paid. So, you know, I wanted this power for everyone who, you know, especially in medical sales, because it's so widely variant. It's, you know, anyway, so I coach a lot of medical device sales reps, or highly commissioned sales reps, really, that, you know, want extra streams of income, that really, you know, want to let go of their golden handcuffs. So that, and I started a women's accountability group with some business friends called Aspiring Women Achieving More. So there's kind of 2 coaching things going on. But it's really, you know, small multis, mindset, really mindset, and looking for forever money are the 2 things we focus on.
That's really cool. Yeah. You touched on the mindset thing again, because it's so important, right? Because you can know what to do, right? It doesn't matter if you don't take action, right? You can know exactly A, B, C, D, all the way down, how to be successful, what exactly to do, right? To every last component of the deal and what you should do, right? But if you're too scared, or you procrastinating, or you have these voices telling you that you can't do it, or whatever it is, right? It doesn't matter, because you're not going to take that first step. You're not going to move forward. You're not going to do it. So yeah, we've had a few of these conversations about mindset, right? It's just so important. And I love that you're able to help people with that as well, because that's just one of the biggest things, I think, you know, because we always hear about paralysis analysis, and I think paralysis analysis is nothing but a mindset issue, in my opinion, you know. So cool.
Totally agree.
Yeah, cool. Well, if people are interested to hear more about what you're doing, maybe they might be interested in being a client of yours, or they're just interested in the deals that you're doing, I want to get in touch. How can they get a hold of you, and how can they find out more about you?
Sure, thank you. Best way to get a hold of me is Facebook, Mandy McAllister RE. I'm also developing mandymcallister.com. So I think saying this out loud is going to make me commit to getting that rolled out. So I put a lot of content out there. If you are an aspiring woman who wants to achieve more, find us on Facebook at Aspiring Women Achieving More as well.
Okay. And Instagram?
I'm yeah, aspiring women on Instagram.
Okay, YouTube.
Yeah. Oh, I haven't started that channel yet, but I think
Okay.
you've inspired me here.
Okay, I'm putting you under pressure.
I like it. I've got some projects now.
Okay, cool. Well, Well, Mandy, thank you so much for today's interview. It's been a lot of fun. You've indulged my humor by playing along with us.
I dig it.
At the start. Yeah, I appreciate it so much. So thank you very much. Excited to hear what's next for you. Let's keep in touch, and it's been a cool interview. Thank you.
Yes, Barry, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.